Welcome everyone to the next episode of the Care CEO Success Stories podcast. My name is Adam James of Springup PR, and today I have another special guest, Peter McGailey. And now Peter is was founder and director of CPM Care Limited, which had 5 care homes. Peter is also right now director of the Care Guys, which is a care consultancy. This episode is going to be focusing, and Peter is going to talk us through it, on what he learned from buying and selling 5 care homes under the banner of CPM Care Limited. So it's going to be a fabulous episode. I'll be asking lots of questions. I'm very, very curious. And Peter has told me he's going to share as much as he feels comfortable with. So that's absolutely fabulous. Peter will introduce himself in his own words in a moment. But as I say, my name's Adam, Springup PR, and this is the Care CEO Success Stories podcast. Please, our mission here is for everyone in the care sector to be inspired and to learn from people who, as I say, have been there, done that, and got the t-shirts. We've had plenty of excellent guests on the Care CEO Success Stories podcast. I urge you to go and look up on them and read and watch, rather, and listen to our amazing guests. And please subscribe and share and like and all the rest of it, because it helps spread the word. That's the mission of the Care CEO Success Stories podcast. And finally, as I said, I'm Adam, and what we do is we help care homes get more inquiries via PR and digital marketing. If you head over to springup-pr.com, you will find a whole load of videos and webinars and free tips and advice on how to get more inquiries via PR and digital marketing. So make sure you go over when you can to springup-pr.com. Right, as they say, without further ado, let's get straight in. Peter, thank you so much. Why don't you start off, please, by telling everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Adam. And it's a pleasure to be invited along. I'm really excited to kind of share that with you and anyone listening to the podcast. So, yeah, our journey in care started in 2003. Prior to that, I had a career in the police, a very similar kind of profession to care. And my wife was a ward sister at the local hospital. And after 10 years of policing and 15 years or so of nursing, we decided that we needed to work that hard for ourselves. So we fell across an opportunity. It was off market. It was a 19-bed care home. It was just as the Care Standards Act kicked in. And at that stage, there was lots of uncertainty around room sizes, passenger lifts, compliance. What did the compliance look like? Nobody quite knew what was going to be insisted upon. So we took a bit of a gamble. We approached a bank, a high street bank. We went with the ability to remortgage our small bungalow with a really small amount of equity and a credit card. And we took on a loan at 95% loan to value back then on a £450,000 purchase with a 5% deposit. And that was our first foray into care. And I learned the care role. My wife taught me that as a nurse. That was second nature to her. We both blustered our way through all of the bits about employing people and getting that right, and filling beds and compliance, and then inspections and local authority contracts and all the other things that come with it. Cash flow and forecasts and projections and business plans and so on. We sold that at the height of the care market, and then said we wouldn't do it again because family time was more important. And then we did do it again very shortly after, a couple of years after. In between time, I set up and sold a medical diagnostics business. We then re-entered the care market with 2 back-to-back deals, just at the height of the banking issue, where on the day of completion for the first one, we didn't even know whether that would complete, whether the funds were still actually in the bank to do that. We bought a 33-bed and a 41-bed home back-to-back within 12 months. and then we added to those with 2 other additional care homes, leaving us with 4 before we took the decision a couple of years ago to exit and kind of move on to pastures new, but within care.
Yeah, I see. Wow. So let's go back to that first one. So, yeah, I mean, as I said, 95%, what's the phrase?
Loan to value.
Loan to value.
Yeah.
So, yeah, considerable. And what kind of, I guess, between you as a family, what was it that I mean, it's quite risky. So what made you decide, well, we're taking the jump here?
So we kind of both have become slightly dissatisfied with our then current jobs. So opportunities in policing in terms of promotion were getting smaller, and senior ranks were being cut down, and also this was in Lancashire.
Where was the care home?
The care home was just north of Blackpool on the promenade. It's a little place called Bisping.
Right.
My wife Claire was equally kind of a little bit disenchanted with promotion opportunities and the work of the NHS. So that's kind of led to our foray into the first care home. And as I say, that opportunity was off market, but 95% loan to value these days would probably give a banker some sort of seizure, I would think.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah.
And how did you then go about learning how to run and operate a small care home?
Kind of baptism by fire. I think we're both people.
Makes a big difference.
Both very caring, and because that was our first business together, and in a caring profession, we kind of wanted to get it right. So there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in those initial days. A lot of learning curves. I think the first day we owned that particular care home, a lady fell over in the dining room and fractured her hip, which resulted in ambulances and lots of paperwork. Nothing like there would be today, but certainly back then there was still some paperwork connected to that. So it was an eventful day, even on the first day when we completed and actually got the ownership. But it was a lot of baptism by fire back then. And this is going to make me sound really old, but back then the internet wasn't really a thing. There wasn't a rule book. There wasn't an ability to go onto LinkedIn and share thoughts and ask questions and seek guidance from other providers. Back then was certainly quite an insular profession.
Right.
I couldn't pop to the care home down the road and introduce myself and say, "Oh, can we have your risk assessments and show us how to do a care plan?" So a lot of those came from. They were all home-produced documents. There were no electronic planning systems at that stage. Everything was kind of home done, homemade, tweaked, altered, added to, developed. And I think by the time we were kind of 12 months in, we were really comfortable that we were getting it right. We had a home that was full. We had waiting lists of people wanting to come in. Great compliments from families and social workers. No issues with back then CSC, before it became C-Sky and then later Care Quality Commission. So yeah, it was a lot of trial and error and a lot of effort to begin with.
And okay, so from then you before I go on, who was the manager? Did you recruit a manager No,
so we kind of did it jointly. It was kind of owner managed. We didn't live in the business. There was no staff accommodation, but we were there all the time. At least one of us for the vast part of most days.
So you were like co-managers. Yeah, I see. Right. Because I know how important that hire is if you're making a hire, but obviously it's you and your own Claire, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Great. Fabulous. Well, so it all went well, and then you decided, okay, and you learned by, as I said, baptism of fire. And what was your next step after everything has been going well? You obviously had a great reputation.
Yeah, so we decided kind of 4.5 years into that actually we wanted to exit from that particular home. Enjoy the fact that sort of care home prices had sort of doubled in that period. It was a period of very rapid growth in the care sector. Growth that was then compliant and meeting demand, because at that stage, 4 years after we took it on, so kind of by late 2007, the Care Standards Act was well embedded. CSC were kind of used to what they're meant to be doing in terms of inspections and how that worked and the methodology and all that sort of thing. So we kind of felt that when we had it, that was the time to sell it, when it's going to be at its kind of maximum value. And it was a converted building that had been a former B&B, converted by the owners before us, that we purchased from. And that gave some longevity issues in terms of passenger lift, bedroom sizes, upper bedrooms, all those sorts of things. So we kind of made that conscious decision then to sell that one, potentially with a view to never doing it again, or jumping straight back in, or something in between. So we actually sold to take advantage of the price difference and the equity that we built up in the business.
Right. Okay. So commercially, it was a good deal for you.
Yeah.
And that's what you decided to do. And then what was the kind of thought processes after that?
So Claire had a bit of time off to enjoy what we still had was a young family at that stage.
Yeah.
I then set up another business that I then sold within that kind of 18-month period. And then we got a call from an agent one morning to say, look, this home's it's come on the market. The sale has just fallen through. It's 41 beds. It's in the northwest. It's got a bit of difficulty with it. It's got some compliance issues. Local authority aren't happy with it. There's a bed embargo currently in a bed block. There's lots of safety issues in there. The sale's fallen through on that basis, and owners are desperate to sell. Do you want to go and have a look? So we did. We drove over, had a look, made an offer the same day as the viewing. It was a low offer. It was advantageous to us, but reflective of the condition that the home was in at that particular time. And it was accepted.
Structurally, and internally, did it need a lot of work?
Needed refurbishment, nothing structural, nothing awful. Notes of roof was fine, electrics, gas, all that sort of thing were fine. It needed a bit of painting and decorating. Furniture was tired. It just looked tired, like a tired care home. And so we kind of budgeted for refurbishments. And a lot of the compliance issues were really born around process, policy, procedure, practical application of that, staff training, all that sort of thing. The manager that was in there was pretty good, pretty competent. An older lady, an older manager, an older lady that had been in service quite some time. And she was confident. So we actually worked in the business as consultants to the business before the completion of the due diligence and the legal purchase of it. So we were already improving.
I see.
We were acquiring from day one, so trying to hit the ground running, as it were. Get the confidence of the local authority, get the confidence of the regulator at that stage, just to make sure that what we were buying was protected as an asset moving forward.
Yeah, I see. And how did you finance this acquisition?
So by that time, we were sat on a decent amount of cash equity from the sale of the previous home. And so we used that as a deposit. So we had a significantly lower loan to value, probably in the region of sort of 70-30, so 30% deposit, 70% loan against the value of that particular business. And that still left us plenty of cash to do the refurbishments and inject that and sort of cash flow and all the other bits and pieces that you need.
Yeah, I see. Fabulous. So that was up and running. And again, did you retain the manager or?
Yeah, so retained the manager for some time, for probably a couple of years there, actually. She was heading more towards retirement age. And then on 12, 14 months into that ownership, we were offered a home in Blackpool, in North Shore of Blackpool, a 33-bed residential dementia home. And that was a retirement sale. And again, that was off market. Someone who I'd known for quite some time as an operator. From our first care home, we used to cross-refer. We weren't dementia-specific. He was dementia-specific. And he kind of got the point where he wanted to sell and phoned me up and said, hey, thinking of putting on the market, do you want first opportunity? So again, we agreed a value. We revalued the first one, had still sufficient cash and profits from operating the first one. And then added in the second home at that stage. That was in a similar position. We think I spent about £70,000-80,000 in the first couple of weeks on refurbishment, and then implementing our own care planning and processes and policies and procedures and all that sort of thing. That one didn't have a manager at the point of purchase.
Mm.
I would say. So that was slightly more of a challenge, but very local to where I live at the time. So that was a lot easier for us to just go and own and manage for a little bit whilst we sourced to manage it.
I see. Okay, I'm just going back to the second home. So I'm just curious. So you retain the same manager. Was there any issues of, I think she of being, manager at a time when it had obviously gone through a crisis, but embargoed. Was that how did you? I'm just curious about that, about, why was that the case and how, how to what extent was the previous manager involved or not in that being, the part of the problem?
Yeah, and you're right. It's a great question to ask, and you're right to kind of to look at that in some granular detail. To be honest, because we certainly did. And I think what we kind of understood as a causation of a lot of that was the previous owners. If I said they were tight, I'd probably be hitting the nail on the head.
Right.
No expenditure, no refurbishment, no training, no to this, no to that, no to the other. Disaffected manager who kind of just got to the point of saying, well, guess what? I can't influence this. I'm asking and you say no. I'm asking and you say no. We're going to get in trouble if we don't do this. We need to do that. This
Right.
is and just the blockade, the barrier to success.
Right, I see.
Absolutely, the previous owners, and they not long. They only had the home for a couple of years,
Right.
so they bought a good home from a long-standing provider for whom the manager had worked previously, and then when they sold to us, they kind of just got it into difficulty. They needed at the time a good consultant, I would have said,
Yeah.
which we actually then stepped in and did. And by the time we actually completed the purchase, we had the embargo lifted, the home was full. CQ, the equivalent of CQC at the time, were a lot happier and confident in the process of running the home moving forwards. Local authorities were making placements and we didn't have any issues. And I think the manager was grateful that we took the view of looking under the skin of whose fault that might be and what the causation was, as opposed to taking somebody's word that it's probably the manager that's an issue. You need to look at the detail of that.
Yeah, I see. Okay, great, interesting. So then you've sold one, and now got two, and you're putting everything in place. And then what happened next?
So we kind of decided that two homes was perfectly suitable, very manageable in terms of size. We'd retained one manager who then, on retiring, had been replaced with another good manager. We recruited and retained a good manager in the second home, and we were kind of happy with that status quo, actually. So we kind of kept an eye on the market. Weren't particularly actively looking for any additional homes. And then an opportunity came up to acquire one, again, close to where we live, northwest of England. That was a 15-bed conversion, right on the edge of Portland-Filed. Beautiful little home in a lovely location with a great garden, great reputation, retirement sale. So we kind of looked at that and said, yeah, absolutely. And again, that needed a little bit of refurbishment, but not a great deal.
Right.
It required a manager, which Claire actually stepped in to do at that stage. That was then an owner manager. That was also an asset purchase with as opposed to a share sale, which the other two homes had been. So slightly different process in terms of registration with the regulator and so on.
Okay.
And a slightly different company structure from our end. So we kind of added that.
What was a different company structure?
So with the share sale, if you buy the 100% issued shares of a limited company, and the assets of that limited company are a trading care home, then the registration as a provider remains the same with the Care Quality Commission unless you want to change it. So line of least resistance in terms of acquisition of a home would be to buy the shares of a limited company that is the provider. And in doing so, the registration remains the same.
Yeah.
If it's an asset sale or an asset purchase, then you're buying the property and the staff will transfer via 2P. So that staff will have opportunity to be retained and stay with the business. But there needs to be somebody holding that asset. And then the provider for that trading asset of a care home is not the same provider as it was at the point of sale. So that you need a vehicle. So hence CPM Care was formed at that stage. When we acquired that home as an asset, we took it under CPM Care, which also owned the shares of the other homes. And then we registered that as a provider for that particular business. Bit of a longer process, a lot more hoops to jump through in terms of the registration aspect of it. Due diligence is very similar. Although with a share purchase, you'll have significantly more warranties and indemnities added in, probably seeing an average asset purchase.
I see. Great. And so that we're in, what then happened after that?
So we said 3's enough. That's you'd have to be crazy to anymore. What are we doing? This is absolutely fine. Claire was enjoying managing that particular home.
Yeah.
And then we had an opportunity to purchase one in Fleetwood that had just come onto the market. And again, that was a bit sort of too good to say no to, really. So we bought it below market value. It wasn't in any particular difficulties. It needed a bit of tweaking. Good reputation. Converted by the NHS, actually, from a hotel to a step-down hospital. Only 22 beds, but a really big 22 beds, huge, spacious corridors. All the infrastructure in the home set up as the NHS would do with multiple boilers. So if one set failed, and the other set would kick in. So things you don't see in care homes unless you purpose build them. And then we sort of acquired that one, which left us with the 4, which we then traded through to sort of final exit.
Yeah, I see. Okay. All right. Well, before we get on to the exit, thank you for sharing all of this. So I know if we could just talk about operationally and the finances. Thank you for your service to our nation's elderly on the care side, but just sort of switching over to the finance side. So they're small homes. I know it can be tight and hard to run a care home that's sustainable financially when it's a small home, especially if occupancy drops. I know that from previous conversations we've had, your occupancy has always been great. But talk me through about the headaches or not on the finances of running operationally in your case, what became four small homes at the same time.
Yeah, so we did see some differences because our homes were kind of 41, 33 registration, the 22 registration and the 15 registration. And with those come very different nuances in terms of kind of operating. The 15-bed home was very attractive to us because it was high fees. So predominantly private clients, predominantly high fees. If it was a funded client, that would come with a top-up element, third-party top-up element. So the fees sat really quite a bit higher than the other homes, which traded at local authority fee rates. And we chose not to distinguish between kind of private rates and local authority rates. So our homes were, as you've said, we ran our homes at approaching sort of 99% occupancy throughout the entire period of ownership, with small fluctuations, but not significant long-held fluctuations. Obviously, 2 or 3 beds down in a 15-bed home has a disproportionate impact on cash flow and profitability. Although we didn't suffer from that because of the home and its reputation. And similarly, the larger homes can kind of accommodate those sort of fluctuations and absorb those a little bit better. So local authorities are generally quite good at paying. But what we have seen across that sort of years and years of ownership is, when we acquired the homes, our EBITDA percentage, so our profitability for the homes, was probably sitting at around between 30 and 35% of turnover. When we exited the homes, that number was closer to sort of 12 to 15% of turnover, maybe slightly higher. And that is just an absolute market position created by inflation, wages particularly, real living wage, and then care fees not keeping pace in terms of increases against those kind of set overheads. So I think the fair cost of care exercise undertaken sort of just around the end of COVID, and that kind of added insult to injury in terms of the way that local authorities perceived that care providers can make this amount of profit or this amount of return on capital, and those numbers were really quite small. So anybody looking to purchase a care home really needs to do the maths both now and project it out way beyond 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years as best you can in terms of stress testing that as well. So, because you don't want to take on a 15-bed home, your model's fine if it's full. If you happen to have 4 beds for a month because of various issues, then and there's a slower run rate to fill those back up again, all of a sudden your model looks nothing like you thought it was going to, and you need to stress test that. So if interest rates rise and occupancy drops, that's not a great position to be in. So equally, I think as Ukraine were invaded by Russia a number of years ago, we saw our utility cost, and this couldn't have been any worse. We saw our utility cost at the time, because all of our renewals were due in one go, both gas and electric. Our renewal costs as a group went up £250,000 on renewal. Yeah. And that's got to come out of your bottom line. There is no other place to get that. So, those kind of pressures do exist. Those unforeseen circumstances do exist.
I see. Very interesting. I mean, going from, did you say 30 to 35 to around about 15 in terms of net profit, a considerable issue which it has to be thought of, as you said. But with the uncertainties and any small adjustments can start to make it a little bit precarious and
I often see business plans for care homes and projections and accounts for care homes, and this is not for the faint of heart. And if the best advice I would give to anybody doing a business plan for a care home is kind of run that past someone who knows what to look at. That's not your accountant, by the way.
I can imagine.
You're great at those, but actually that experience on the ground is really important for that. But be realistic about it and stress test it. It's not just the core business plan. The stress test assumption should really be, if this happens and that happens, and that's a worst case scenario that we're ever likely to see, do I still have a viable business? And that's really important from a business perspective, but it's also really important from an ethical perspective. Because, of course, care homes are people's homes. And if you're 90 and frail, and all of a sudden your care home is closing and you have to move to another setting, it's distressing, it's upsetting, and we know that outcomes for people are really poor. So there's an ethical stance to what is a business issue, but that stress testing is hugely important.
And okay, so and then let's move on to the exits that you made, because I took it through it about how you went about it and why.
So we, in the latter years, we had acquired and bought a care at home business, because that's not something we've done in care, and it's something that we kind of always had a bit of an ambition to have a look at. So we bought lovely little business over in Oldham. And I've just come off the back of a call with a CQC inspector who spent the last hour interviewing me as the nominated individual for that service, and that was all good. I have to say that was very, very professionally done. But the exit for us came partly because of our work at Care at Home, partly because of the fact we set up an adult day centre as well, which is an amazing model that we are just currently franchising, which is about to launch, So we made a conscious decision to come away from regulated care, having done it for so long. And our initial ambition was to sell the group as a group. And that sounds really easy. So you make a decision, I'm going to sell my home, and then you find an agent that you quite like and think, okay,
did you have an agent who you liked?
We did a bit of shopping around. And then we went with one particular agent who originally agreed to sell as a group. And we had an initial really confident flurry of really positive inquiries from venture capital and high net worth individuals, looking at the overall profitability of the group, which was significant. And then we found that actually the offers that were being made at that stage were low. That's not me overvaluing a business because it's mine and therefore it's got to be worth a fortune. That's kind of just low in terms of what we know the market value should be. So after probably sort of 8, 9, 10 months of that process, which is a lot of tire kicking, a lot of people having a look, a lot of NDAs and lots of disclosure of data, it does become slightly...
curious, before we move on, how did you decide if someone was serious or properly serious before getting into the trenches?
Yeah, so some of that's steerage by the agent who kind of is introducing a potential buyer, saying, "Look, we know these guys. They bought 6 homes from us in the last 2 years,
Okay.
or these guys are new, but we've seen funds and proof of concept and all that sort of stuff." So there are ways of kind of validating.
Yeah.
So validated buyers, but the bids were all fairly low. In some cases, there was earnouts and tie-ins and all sorts of things we didn't really want to do, and kind of almost a year into having made the decision, and it is an emotional decision. Kind of you're selling your children almost, something that you've lived and breathed and worked in and developed and put a lot of effort into, and you're fond of, and the people and the staff and the teams and the residents that live there and their families. So that it's an emotional decision at that stage. But notwithstanding, we then made the decision to offer the homes individually, and we did so. And then our first home was under offer really quickly. And then on the day of completion, after several months of legal due diligence and everything else, the buyer pulled out, which is nice. It happens. And that's not the phone call you want to be getting from the solicitor the day before, literally the day of completion.
Why did they pull out?
Personal circumstances.
Right.
They were buying the home for the son. They had a successful family care home anyway. They built up some cash. It was a cash purchase. They were buying the home for the son, and whatever had happened between parents and son, they decided on that last day that actually they weren't going to do that.
Right.
Disappointing for us, and no doubt disappointing for the son involved as well. So that one went back into the market. We had other interest in the other homes. We then had a second failed sale on that home, which then you start thinking, my goodness, this is really stressful. I'm losing the will. I'm losing the will to even continue this process. Shall we just keep them, or shall we do something else, or whatever? Yeah. And then we kind of saw some traction with all the first 3 homes being under offer, with competent buyers, with progression, around the due diligence and so on. In some cases, valuations. And surveys, because all those kind of things give you confidence that actually this buyer is aiming to complete this deal. They're not messing us about. And then we completed 2 on the same day in August last year, 1 in September, and then the last home completed on the 31st of December, New Year's Eve.
I see. Oh, wow, fabulous. And out of all of this, I know you're now, you run the care consultancy, so all this experience feeds into how you help providers at the moment. What have you feel, well, let me put this another way. If you were going to go into, I know you're home care at the moment, but if you're going to go into care homes again, like now, how would you do it? What have you learned?
Don't do it. No, I would do it again. I absolutely would do it again. I'm not going to at this stage, because we've got other care opportunities we're working in and we're very excited about as well. I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed that whole journey, from the first care home and learning the role to then selling that and then acquiring and building and then exiting the group. And I absolutely enjoyed that. Not without heartache, not without difficulty, not without trauma, and but for the vast majority of the time, that's a really enjoyable thing to do, and it's a nice thing to be involved in. I would do it again, and if I were to do it again today, I'd probably look only towards what I would call a future-proof care home of the right size. So kind of 30 beds plus, ideally sort of 30, 35 plus would be better. Either a really good quality conversion or purpose-built. And there is absolutely a place in the market, and the market position statements from all local authorities reflect this, that there is a place in the market for smaller homes, bigger homes, corporate homes, family-owned, single operator, group operator, regional operator. There is absolutely a place for those. What I would then think, okay, so if I'm going to buy this home, I'm going to operate it for the next 20, 30 years, it's got to be future-proof. It's got to be energy efficient. Energy bills are nails in coffins for care homes, and we're seeing oil prices today and things. So those are really valid sort of concerns. I think people's expectation is, if you go and stay in a hotel, you generally don't pick one that's not got an ensuite bedroom. It's kind of a given. Build houses have ensuite bedrooms, and that's kind of a given. So I kind of think the market expectation is that people want ensuite bedrooms. They want a decent sized bedroom. They want decent sized corridors. Fire regulations are a huge issue in older care homes. I've seen people receive bills of £200,000 and £300,000 just to compartmentalise a care home for fire safety. Those are kind of hidden things until they're not. And then if you own it, that's your issue. I've seen CQC and Fire Brigade close homes down as a result of fire safety concerns where compartmentalisation has been insufficient and the cost to do it has been beyond the ability of the business to achieve it in the timescale. So I would kind of cut out all of that sort of concern and noise by going down that route with it. Absolutely.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, great. Well, I mean, there's been another question I have for you is, do you feel, or what would you say was the biggest mistake you made that if you were having your time again, you have learned from?
Gosh, that's probably a tough one actually, because I'm going to admit a mistake publicly. I think for us, we refinanced our homes from one high street bank to another high street bank.
Right.
And that was quite an expensive process for various reasons, valuations, fees, and so on and so forth. It did then provide us some additional flexibility in terms of further acquisition and expansion. I kind of think the bank that we went with initially, which is probably not professional of me to name publicly, was the high street bank, and probably not a bank that actually understood care very well. And that became a little bit of a self-limiting kind of thing. And I think I would be more selective in terms of the lender and their understanding of borrowing in the care sector particularly. And I know nowadays there are quite a reasonable cohort of bespoke lenders and specialist lenders who fully understand the care market and see it for what it is in terms of supporting acquisitions and growth and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I think probably the biggest mistake was our original lender, which was fine to begin with, but then latterly not so fine. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, I mean, obviously the care homes, the care sector is has its own, like any sector has its own peculiarities and unique features. So if you have someone who's at least aware and cognizant of those, then that I'm sure is in your favour, which you've highlighted. Well, Peter, this has been amazing. Now, is there anything that we've not covered that you feel would be useful for our audience? And this is particularly for those who are maybe, kind of either just thinking of starting out or around about the 2 homes, the issues of going from 2 to 4, operationally, things that they need to think about, or, thinking about an exit, or, I mean, anything that we've not covered that you feel might be useful?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of kind of advice to people, I would say that, when we look to acquire, whether it's a first home or whether it's additional homes to start building and looking at a growth strategy, I think that it's really easy to kind of get tied up in extraneous costs that you probably don't need to bear, whilst at the same time probably overlooking the bits that you do need to consider. So for me, I would say, for example, I know of a sale of a care home recently that actually aborted and failed just on the run up to completion for various reasons. And the potential buyer for that home was left with a £50,000 legal bill for the legal work of all the legal due diligence, and the searches and the valuations and everything else that kind of goes with that. And they were left with that's a very large bill to stand for no gain. Yeah. Equally, the seller of that particular business ended up with a particularly large bill from their solicitor for this. Now, we've used very particular solicitors for all of our sales, and our legal bills on sales of homes valued over £1 million was £6,500. And you get the same legal due diligence, and you get the same legal process, and the same share purchase documentation. So we've kind of fine-tuned that kind of whole process. So Really, my advice would be to anybody looking to either enter the sector or even looking to exit the sector or purchase and acquire further, would be when you're assembling that team to support that process, would be to really consider using a consultancy that's got that kind of specialist knowledge of the whole process. The devil's in the detail. So, for example, your legal due diligence questionnaire, which is a standard legal document, runs to many, many pages, used by all solicitors in commercial transactions. We'll cover off fire, for example. We mentioned fire earlier, so fire is a good example. So let's say it mentions fire. Have you got a fire risk assessment? Is it up to date? Have you done your fire alarm testing? Is your alarm fully fit for purpose? And have you tested your extinguishers? And on paper, that home looks as though it's fully compliant with fire. Underneath the skin of that, you could actually go and do a site visit on that home and find that actually the fire risk assessment's insufficient. It wasn't done by a competent and proper person. It's missed lots of actions. Compartmentalization's an issue, etc.